Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the adventurous Vaughn Manor, where Roger and I have returned to make plans. We're making plans today, Roger. Man, you can't get much more exciting than this channel. We sure come up with some thrilling things to do, Roger. Actually, we're finalizing our plans because here we are in that strange gray area between Christmas and New Year's, when the year 2025 is just about done and I have to think seriously about what I'm going to read and how I'm going to do my channel in 2026. It's some pretty tough stuff we've got to plan today, Roger. We've got a lot going on in 2026 too. Too much, as usual. Too much. It's always too much. Every time I make plans, I make too many plans, and I'm never able to, do everything I want to do. But we're going to make a real effort in 2026, Roger, because we've got a lot of stuff on our plate. So let's talk about it. And this isn't even including comic books. We're not really even including comic books today, because I feel like I talked about that recently. But today, mostly just regular books. Books without any pictures, Roger. At least not many. Anyway, starting off, due to popular demand and Roger's threats, Roger's Cheap Old Book Club will return in 2026. So Roger's Cheap Old Book Club always starts in February, and then we have a book every month for the rest of the year. And so coming in January will be the video where I announce all the titles for the upcoming year, 2026, starting in February. And Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, the cheapest book club of all, every single title in Roger's Cheap Old Book Club is available for free from Project Gutenberg, and you can't get any cheaper than free. And traditionally, Roger's Cheap Old Book Club has had some very obscure books. And it's also had classics of literature that are just perhaps not as read nowadays as they were at one time. And other books that are good but just have never been read all that much. So we're going to have a list of titles like that. And of course, before I put the list together, I thought I would ask my fabulous audience, is there a book you think should be on Roger's Cheap Old Book Club? Is there a book that is in the public domain that would be suitable for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club? Let me know. Put it in the comments if you could think of one that you'd like to see us read in Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. Put it in the comments. Maybe we'll add it to the list. It's up to you, Roger. But Roger's Cheap Old Book Club is definitely one thing that is happening for sure in 2026. So that'll be fun. Right now, I am reading a book in Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, which is Omu from Herman Melville. Herman Melville. I could talk. Not well, but I can talk. Omu, which is the sequel to Typee, which is the book we read last December for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. Almost pretty good. I'm about halfway through. I should finish it within the next few days, despite being very busy. It's very busy this time of year. Good book. Not as good as Typee, though. Not as good as Typee, but still pretty good. I will talk more about this on my next reading report, whenever that is. Whenever that happens. So that was that. Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. What else have we got going on? Well, we've got a lot of series that we're doing and authors. Edgar Rice Burroughs. Where am I at with Edgar Rice Burroughs? I didn't read nearly as much of Edgar Rice Burroughs this year as I wanted to because I kept getting bogged down in other things. I'm on a quest to read every book by Edgar Rice Burroughs, more or less in the order that he wrote them. This could be tricky because they were published in magazines, and the book publications tend to be sometimes in different orders, but more or less. And the next book I have to read for Edgar Rice Burroughs is The Efficiency Expert, which I've been kind of putting off because it's called The Efficiency Expert. So how exciting can it be? But I've been told it's not all that bad. It's not that bad. It's just not much of a recommendation, frankly, but I'm going to be reading this one, and then I'll probably read a Tarzan book right after it, because the book right after this that I have to read for Edgar Rice Burroughs is Tarzan the Terrible. Tarzan the Terrible! Which I remember being a book that is not terrible at all. I remember that being pretty good, although I was like 16 when I read it. So yes, more Edgar Rice Burroughs, a lot more this year. I'm going to do better on Edgar Rice Burroughs than I did in 2025. So we'll see how that goes. There's some other stuff as far as authors. One author I want to read a lot more of this year is Andre Norton. This is an Andre Norton book. This is Daybreak 2250 AD, which I want to read just to get the deal on the cat. What's the deal with the cat on the raft? I don't know. And there's this other one. What the hell's going on this cover? Another cat. I have no idea. And I also have the Beastmaster around here somewhere. Got to read the Beastmaster. And maybe Witch World. Man, she wrote a lot of stuff, Andre Norton. So definitely going to be reading more Andre Norton coming in 2026 because she's awesome. And I had a good time reading the one Andre Norton book I read in 25. What else is going on? Well, of course, to go along with Edgar Rice Burroughs, I am also slowly, extremely slowly, reading every book by Stephen King. And the next one I have to read is The Drawing of the Three. I read It by Stephen King, his massive book It, and that was just... I was temporarily finished with Stephen King after that. I needed a Stephen King break after It. But I will be starting up again in 26, reading Stephen King. And the next book is The Drawing of the Three. So I will read that probably, I'm thinking in March or April. I have no idea. One of those. But I'm also going to be reading a lot more of our favorite writer of all time, Roger, which is Robert E. Howard. I've got a lot of Robert E. Howard on my plate to read. And one of the books I'm going to be reading for sure is Swords of the North. I'm going to be reading, I hope, at least 5 books from the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press this year. I've got a lot of them to read, and I had such a good time with the Weird Menace volume that I read recently. This is going to be a lot better than that volume because this has some fantastic stories in it. Swords of the North. And it's a nice, generous size. What is this? Yeah. 460 pages or something like that. So, be reading more Robert E. Howard this year, and why wouldn't I? And, of course, I've been promising to read more Clark Ashton Smith, and I just got a couple random Clark Ashton Smiths to throw up. This one is Zikarf from Ballantine Adult Fantasy, and this is Hippocampus Press, Zothique. It's Zothique, The Last Cycle. More Clark Ashton Smith this year. The most underrated of the big three of Weird Tales. Fantastic writer, Clark Ashton Smith. So I will be reading a lot more of Smith this year. More on that in the near future. I've got a video series coming up about Clark Ashton Smith, so that would be fun. There's also a couple series that I'm going to start this year, and one is Fafford and the Grey Mouser. So this is Fritz Leiber. He did this is actually book number 3, right? Yeah, Swords in the Mist, book number 3. So I'm going to be reading the whole Fafford and the Grey Mouser series this year. Probably do one a month until I'm done. They are not particularly long. And I remember them being great. But again, this is a series I read a long time ago. I think I was in my 20s when I read Fafford and the Grey Mouse for the first time. Well, the only time. I think I've only read this series once. And that would have been, yeah, probably in the 1990s. So that was a while ago. It was a little while ago, Roger. So coming up on my ever so exciting channel, Fafford and the Grey Mouser. And of course, we will be continuing with the Dresden Files, which I don't have any physical books to show you because I have them all on ebooks. But I'm going to continue with the Dresden Files this year. I don't know how many I'll read this year, but yeah, going to be reading more of those because those are fun. Also, finally, I'm going to get back to Seabury Quinn's Jules de Grandon. It's Jules de Grandon. It's Jules de Grandin. Which I've talked a lot about, but it's been a while since I've read these. And so, yeah, I'm going to try to knock out all 5 of the complete tales of Jules de Grandin this year. This year is just going to be full of pulp, Roger, because we're also reading every month a Doc Savage adventure this year. Also, going to be reading a lot more of The Shadow. Also, going to be reading a lot more of The Spider, the great pulp hero, The Spider. I've got a lot of Spider to read. Also, some weird ones like The Black Bat and The Green Llama. I've never read The Green Llama, but I've got some Green Llama. So, we're going to be reading that, Roger. As well as some other stuff. Also, a couple years ago, I read all of the Kane short stories. And I intended to get right to the novels, but I didn't. So I still have this book, Gods in Darkness, the complete novels of Kane. Because it's been a long time since I read the Kane novels. And the Kane novels are Bloodstone, Dark Crusade, and Darkness Weaves. Great, great dark fantasy by the wonderful writer Carl Edward Wagner, who left this earth far too soon. So yeah, finally going to be getting back to Kane. That's going to be fun to read and talk about. And of course, there's a bunch of events coming up next month in January. There are a couple things going on. There's Haggard in January, which I was going to read Haggard's biography, but then somebody mentioned somewhere that when H. Rider Haggard wrote King Solomon's Mines, the first Alan Quatermain story, Alan Quatermain narrates that story, and he's 55 years old when he narrates that story. And in January, I'm going to be 55 years old. So it only seems appropriate that I read King Solomon's Mines again. When's the last time I read that? Probably when I was in my 30s at some point. It's probably 32 or 33 or something. Going to be 55. So same age as Alan Quatermain when he narrated the adventure King Solomon's Mines. So I always thought of him as an old guy when I was reading those Alan Quatermain books earlier when I was younger. So now I'm an old guy. Alan Quatermain doesn't seem so old anymore now. I'm going to be reading King Solomon's Mines in January. But also, it is Ambiwary in January, a reading event created by Grammaticus. And I have only one more Chronicles of Amber books left. I have, which one is the last one? The Prince of Chaos. So I've read all of the other Amber books, but then I couldn't get to the last one because once I read it, it's over. I don't know if you ever like that with series. If it's a series you really, really like, you get to the end and you hold off reading the last one because once you read it, it's all done. That's kind of how I felt with Amber. I really like this series. Roger Zelazny has become one of my favorite writers. And I've liked all of these books. I know there are different opinions about the different books, but I've liked them all. And so, yeah, Prince of Chaos, the last one. Going to be reading that in January. And then the Great Book of Amber will be finished. And every other Amberwary after that, I'll just have to read a non-Amber Roger Zelazny book, of which I have plenty. So that'll be fun. And what else do we have going on that I'll be taking part in? There is Horror Mayhem in May. Going to be reading horror short stories and short novels in May. That'll be fun. June on the Range, of course. June on the Range. And we're planning on reading more Westerns throughout the year, but June on the Range is just packed full of Westerns. And in July is Rocket Summer, a reading event devoted to classic science fiction. And that's awesome. And I will be reading a ton of classic science fiction also throughout the year, I hope. Including a lot more ace doubles, because now I have even more ace doubles. The only thing is, I'm still doing, of course, the 500 book challenge. And early in the 500 book challenge, I made the foolish decision, to count ace doubles as one book instead of two books. That's the only bad thing about ace doubles. But they're awesome. So I'll be reading more of those probably. And you're probably thinking, man, Michael, what a lot of trash you're reading this year, Roger. It is Garbogust every month here at Stately Vaughan Manor. But I am, on top of all this other stuff, I am going to be reading some classics. And I also forgot to mention Sumerian September. I did that the last time I talked about the stuff I was going to read. Yes, Sumerian September is going to be happening again this year. The theme this year is the Savage Sword of Sumerian September. That's the theme. Of course, in Sumerian September, it's just about reading Robert E. Howard. And you can read any Robert E. Howard books you want. That's the whole point, is to read some Robert E. Howard in September. But the theme this year is going to be the Savage Sword of Sumerian September, where one of the focuses is going to be on one of the greatest publications of all time concerning Robert E. Howard stuff. So we're doing that. But like I said, yes, that's a lot of pulpy stuff. What about classics? You're right, I should read more of those. So I thought, I should decide which classics I'm going to read. Some I already know. Homer, I'm definitely going to read. Going to read the Iliad, going to read the Odyssey. Hopefully I'll get to Herodotus as well in 26. But what else? So I thought, I should grab a handy guide, a handy, reliable guide to the classics. So I got this. But then I remembered, Roger, didn't Penguin include Morrissey's autobiography in their Penguin Classics list? These guys suck. I can't rely on them. So I had to find a more reliable guide to the classics. Marvel Comics. I mean, who knows more about the classics than Marvel Comics, right? So I grabbed this guide, Roger. So this, of course, has all their classic Marvel comics. So who knows classics better than Marvel, right? So I grabbed this. This has a whole bunch of classics that they did back in the day. They did comic adaptations of classics. Many of these stories in this one have questionable art. Some are good, but, there's a lot of Dino Castrillo in this volume, and Dino is not my favorite artist of all time. But, this would help me decide which classics to read this year. And so I looked at this, and the first one in this book is The Last of the Mohicans. The Last of the Mohicans, which looks pretty badass on this cover here. Of course, this is by James Fenimore Cooper, and that is part of the Leatherstocking Tales. And then I thought, man, it's been a long time since I've read the Leatherstocking Tales. I should read all of those again. And so we're going to do that, Roger. The only thing is, Should I read the Leatherstocking Tales in the order that they were originally published? Or should I read them in the order of Natty Bumppo's life? You know, because that's a different order entirely from how he wrote the stories. I'm going to have to figure that one out, Roger. But I have all of those books in the Library of America, so I should read those. And there's also some other good suggestions from this brilliant classics guide here. What else is in here? We've got Robinson Crusoe, which I haven't read in a long time. We've got The Moonstone, which was not my favorite from that author. We've also got Kidnapped. I should read Kidnapped again. We've also got The First Man in the Moon. That was a good one from H.G. Wells. We've also got Alice in Wonderland. I don't know that I've ever read Alice in Wonderland. I don't know that I ever have. I don't think I have. Man, what's wrong with me? I got to read that book. So, got to break out the greatest classic guide of all to figure out what I'm going to read this year. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff, Roger. But that's all I could think of at the moment. As I'm going into it, I'm trying to figure out, what are the things I'm for sure going to read. And of course, we're going to be packing a bunch of other stuff in here as well. I've got a lot going on in 2026. So yeah, we're just sitting around, Roger and I, talking about what's going on in the future. I will shut up now. This has been a random, goofy video. That's okay. I will catch you next time.